Hi everyone, it's Lynn Dion from Pink Whisper Designs. I'm going to be using several products from the Tim Holtz line today. We're going to be using one of his dyes. It's a little bit of an older dye, but we're going to use it in a new way. I'm going to use our Distress Oxide inks to spray some backgrounds, and then we'll be embossing those backgrounds with this beautiful Tapestry embossing folder. So why don't we go ahead and get started. So let's get started by spraying a background. We're going to do a little bit of a rainbow effect. So I've got spun sugar, spiced marmalade, squeezed lemonade, cracked pistachio, and salvaged patina. So these are the ones we're going to be using. We're going to make a couple different backgrounds. And then you do want to make sure you shake these really well, just to make sure you mix up that ink. I've got my Splat box. I have a little Kraft mat down in there as well, just so I don't get the cardboard too wet. And then I'm going to start off by putting some gloves on. You certainly don't need to do this. Just trying to keep it as clean as I can because I usually make quite a mess when I'm doing this. And I'm going to start at the bottom because I want those inks to kind of run down into each other. So I'm going to start at the bottom with the Salvaged Patina. And then I'm going to make my way up a little bit with the cracked pistachio. And I'm just kind of spritzing that fairly lightly. I'm going to come back in and add a little bit more so we can keep adding layers of ink here. So let's go ahead and give this another spray of the Salvaged Patina down at the bottom. And then I've got that spiced marmalade, and I'm going to give that a nice spritz. This was coming out a little bit more than I wanted, but that's okay. We'll work with that, and we can move that ink around a little bit more. I've got the squeezed lemonade, and then I did want to leave a little bit of room at the top for some spun sugar. So what I'm going to do is just grab that and add that to the top. You could always wipe away a little bit of that squeezed lemonade if you need to. We'll be doing that a little bit later, but for now I just added that color. I just stood this up so that it would kind of run together, and you see that beautiful pattern it creates. And I'm going to clean off the nozzle on all of these sprayers before you put them away. You do want to make sure you do that so that they're not clogged when you use them again. So now we've got everything done. I added a little bit more of that spun sugar right at the top. We'll let that run together. And then we can go ahead and add any more that we want. So here you can see I'm coming back in with the spiced marmalade, adding a little bit more of that color, a little bit more of the squeezed lemonade. So just keep working that. You can always let it dry and then add more color, but I did kind of want these to run together a little bit better. So I'm cleaning off that little Kraft mat, and I'll set that aside for now. Now let's go back to that Salvaged Patina and the cracked pistachio. And again, I'm going back with the Salvaged Patina, just add a little bit more of that color. This time I'm going to keep this fairly flat, and then we'll let the colors run together when we get towards the end. So I'm using the exact same color combination we used before. And here's where you see I just dab a little bit off the top there so I can come in with that spun sugar. We'll give a nice spritz of that. So the rainbow will be very loose looking. I just kind of wanted these colors to blend a little bit. And this one, we're going to get a little bit more definition to those lines, to those different colors. We're getting a little more definition of color. Whereas with that first one, we got a lot more blending. So it depends on how much or how little of that blending you want. You can add more or less ink. You could always add some water to this as well. Now I'm just going to dab off some of that excess right along the edges, just where it pools up a little bit. And I'm just using a paper towel to do that. So I'll just clean those up. And then let's go ahead and grab the heat tool, and we can quickly dry these. You could always just set them aside to dry as well. And look how beautiful these are. Look at how these colors ran together. And again, this one is a little more defined than the other one. So now I've got from the Tim Holtz Sizzix Thinlits Colorize collection, I've got this really beautiful die. This is called Bloom. And these little dies are labeled on the back so you know exactly what you're working with. We're going to do this first set of leaves For the next card, we'll be using another set of leaves from that same set. So we're not going to be using the flower today. So that's the leaf we're using, and those are the 3 layers there. And again, they're labeled on the back of the dies so you know exactly which color to die cut. However, we're going to do these all in white, and we're going to layer up the white cardstock. We're not going to be worried about the greens or the black color that's suggested on the back. We're just going to do these in white. So I've die cut all of the pieces. I ran those through my Sizzix Sidekick machine. I've got my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and we can start gluing these together. So each of these flowers, or each of these leaves, has 3 sections to it. That base layer, and then the second layer, and then the third layer. So even though these are white, we're going to have a lot of dimension to them. They're going to have a lot of interest and a lot of dimension. And we're going to be adding some color to these in a little bit of a different way. So I'll show you that here in a second. So let's go ahead and glue down the second layer of that one, and then this third piece. Now you could always do these out of some vellum paper if you prefer, or even some of your shimmery papers. But again, I went back to the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock to do these. So these will be nice and thick, and they'll have a lot of substance to them. Let's just glue on that last little piece. I believe that leaf only has 2 parts to it. So I went ahead and did the same thing for this other one. So we've got 2 of these, and you can see that up close how pretty that is. I'm going to use my fingers and just curl the tips of those leaves just a little bit, just for a little bit more dimension. And now let's grab this Sizzix Texture Fades from Tim Holtz, and this one is called Tapestry. This did come out with the Halloween series in the fall, but I just love this. This is absolutely gorgeous. This is the first time I'm using it, and I just can't believe how pretty this will come out. So let's go ahead and run that through so you can get a good look at this. So I'm placing that inside the embossing folder. And then I've got 2 pieces of cardboard. These are just from some old notepads that I had. I like to grab my Spellbinders Platinum platform, the embossing folder with the cardstock, and then those 2 pieces of cardboard. You could stack up some cardstock here, whatever's easier for you. If it's too tight though, you don't want to run it through, just back it out and remove some of that cardstock. And look at this. Isn't this absolutely gorgeous? I could not believe how pretty this is. Next, I've got the Scorched Timber Distress Oxide ink. This is one of the brand new ones from Tim Holtz. And this is just such a really nice dark color for the edges. It's going to frame this really well. And I'm using a medium-sized brush. You could use a large brush here just to kind of go all the way around the edges. We'll darken those up a little bit more later on with a smaller blending brush, but for right now, I'm just going to bring that color in. And then with that brush being fairly dry, I'm just using the ink that's left on the brush to hit those high spots. Now, if you do need a little bit more, you can grab some of that leftover ink that's on your glass media mat, like I'm doing there, or you can grab some from your ink pad, but I would recommend just kind of rubbing off some of that excess before you go to your cardstock. You just want to hit the high spots on this embossed area, and that'll just kind of bring out that design a little bit better. So you can get a closer look at that, and isn't that just beautiful? So now I've got a tiny little blending brush, and I'm just going to go around the edges of these leaves just to darken them up, give them a little bit more of a vintage look that will go really well with our background. And with this tiny little brush, I can get into all of these smaller areas. I did the same thing for that second one. And now let's do some spattering. I'm going to grab some of those inks that we use, some of the Distress Oxide sprays. You can grab any of these you like. I've got Spun Sugar here, Spiced Marmalade, and a little bit of Kraft Pistachio. I'm going to spray them right onto my glass media mat. I'll spray them also with a little bit of water, And then with a number 0 brush, this is a tiny little brush, I'm going to spatter these. And I'm just adding all 3 of those colors. And that will just kind of tie these little leaves into our background a little bit better. And then I did decide to come in with one more color, so I'm going to clean that off. Let's come back in with the squeezed lemonade and add a little bit of that spattering as well. Now you can let these dry in between the colors, or I wasn't too worried about that, so I just spattered it all at the same time. And then you get that really nice effect onto your leaves. Now I've got that small blending brush again, and I'm just going to darken up these corners, again just to frame this a little bit better. For the card base, I've got some distressed Kraft Heavystock from Holtz, and this measures 4 1/4 by 11 inches. I'm going to score that at 5 1/2 inches, and this is a nice heavyweight cardstock, so it's going to be perfect for our card base. So let's go ahead and glue this panel to the front of that. I've got some Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. And this will line up perfectly with our card base. Now let's add these leaves, and I'm going to have one kind of facing down and one going up. And I want to add a quote chip here. These are fairly new. These quote chips are the labels. These are from the Holtz idea-ology collection, and you can see that you get a ton of these. And some are rectangular, some are oval. There's smaller ovals and larger ones. But I'm going to grab this one. And this one says, "Live for the moments you cannot put into words." And I just think that's so pretty. So to add a little ink around those edges, because it does kind of look like cardboard on the side, I'm going to rub on a little bit of ink of that Scorched Timber ink. You can run it right inside the ink pad, just kind of rub it along the ink pad, and then I'm blending that out with that small blender brush. And then we can go ahead and glue down our leaves, and I'm going to leave the tips of those curled up a little bit just for a little bit more dimension. And I love the movement that these leaves have, so it gives a really nice effect. Let's go ahead and glue down that other set of leaves. I'm just checking to see exactly where I need that to be. And then I did glue down the quote chip, but in the end I didn't like that. I thought it needed to be popped up. Those leaves are thick, and I just felt like it needed to be popped up over top of those. So even though I had already glued it down, I'm going to carefully remove that. And what I'm going to do is add some foam tape to the back of this. So I was able to easily take it off. It hadn't dried yet. I'll add some 3D foam, and I'll just remove that backing, and then we'll place that down. And again, that'll give us a little more dimension as well. And next, just to tie everything a little bit together a little bit better, I've got these metallic pearls in matte gold, and these are from Pink Fresh Studio. What's nice about these is they're all different sizes, so I'm going to grab some of the various sizes and glue those down. Now let's go to that second background. Actually, this was the first background we did. That was the second one there. So let's go to that first background we created. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to have the blues up towards the top on this one. I'm going to run that embossing folder through just like we did before. And then we're going to do the exact same process. Let's go ahead and add that ink, that Scorched Timber ink, all the way around the edges. And then we'll add a little bit of that ink over top of the high spots on the embossed area. And look how different this one looks compared to the other one. So again, going back to creating these backgrounds, it depends how much blending you want. So you can keep adding more ink to get more of that blending. And this one is just a little bit softer, not quite as defined as the other one. And then let's go ahead with that smaller blending brush and just add some more darkness to those corners and glue this onto the card base. And now for this one, I'm going to use that other set of leaves that came with this die set. And we're going to, that's the one we used for that card. We're going to use this one here for the second card. Again, this has 3 parts to it, and they are labeled just like before on the back if you want to create exactly what was created on the packaging. But again, I'm going to run these through with some Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. And then let's go ahead and glue these layers together. Now do keep in mind that all of the products I'm using today are listed and linked down below and also on my blog. If you want to make these backgrounds, it's really fun while you have everything out and everything is kind of like ready to go. Just do a whole bunch of backgrounds. Just grab all of your distress sprays and just start creating some really pretty backgrounds. I like to just have a stack of them ready to go. That way I can quickly and easily make a card. You can just emboss it depending on the occasion that you're working on and just have these all stacked up and ready. And then you can add your sentiments. And of course with these quote chips it's really easy to do because you just grab the appropriate one, and there's so many great quote chips in this little collection. And you see how quickly these little leaves go together. This is another nice set of leaves that can be used for just about anything. I like the shape of them. They could be used to make a wreath. You could place these and the other leaves we used before, kind of alternate them and make a really pretty wreath. So there's a lot of fun you can have with these. So kind of pull out your dies and see what you have. You probably already have some little clusters of leaves. I just thought these were really pretty for this project. So there's a closer look at that. Now let's go ahead and do the same thing we did before. We're just going to grab a variety of our distress sprays. Just spray those directly onto the glass media mat. Again, I'm just using those same colors we used before. We'll spritz those with a little bit of water. And then again, picking that up with a brush and spattering those. We do want to add that ink around the edges. On the first one I added it before I did my spattering, but either way is fine. Just make sure this is nice and dry before you start adding the Scorched timber ink around the edges. So there's how that looks. Let's set those aside to dry, and then we'll come back in with that small blending brush and go all around each of these little leaves. And this really finishes these off nicely and again brings in that vintage look. So I did finish that up off camera, and let me give you a closer look at this. So we have all that dimension, and these are just so pretty. Now let's go back to the background and lay these out. I'm going to lay them out just like we did with the other one. And then let's grab a second quote chip, and I wanted to show you some of these. I had a really hard time selecting which one I wanted. There's just so many. They're all so beautiful. For this one, I decided to grab the one that says, "Your heart and my heart are very old friends." But you can see all the choices you have there. So let's add some glue to this first set of leaves. And now we can go ahead and glue down this second set. And then we'll pop up this little sentiment just like we did before. So I'm going to add some ink around the edges first. And again, you can just rub that right along your ink pad if you want to. It just adds a lot of ink right up front. And then you can just kind of smooth that out with your blending brush. I've got some 3D foam tape we're going to add to each side. That way the little stems that are in the center will kind of sit in that middle part. So I'm going to add a little touch of glue down in there and then place that right over top. Let's go back to those really pretty pearls, the Pink Fresh Studio metallic pearls. I've laid out a bunch of those and we're going to just glue those in place. So let's go ahead and take a look at our finished cards. Here's that first background we created, and you can see it's a little bit more, a little softer, a lot of that color running together, and I just thought that was so pretty. And you can see that spattering we have on the leaves, which really ties everything together. And that beautiful embossing in the background, I just love that embossing folder. I think it's really useful and versatile for a lot of different projects. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.